Call this meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. This is President Rich Atwater. Welcome to our teleconferencing Ring Central meeting. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask Claudia if she'd call the roll of the board.
Of course. Good afternoon, everybody. President Atwater.
Present.
Director Millibar.
Here.
Director Estremera. Director Palmer.
Here.
Director Martin.
Here.
Director Chang.
Here.
Director Anapdawi.
Here.
And I believe alternate director Barbara Keegan is going to be filling in for Director Estremera. So alternate director Keegan.
Present.
Excellent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this point in time, we have one closed item to start off our meeting. And before we move into closed session, Claudia, do we have any requests for public comments on the closed session item?
At this time, Director Atwater, we do not have any public comment requests for the closed session item.
Okay, then we'll go into closed session.
Right. So just confirming I have the group ready to go. You should receive a notification on your screen that you will be entering into the closed session now.
There it is. So we just joined that, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Claudia. I'd like to reconvene into open session from our closed session. And before we move forward, I'd like to ask our legal counsel, Josh, to report any reportable actions.
Thanks, President Atwater. No reportable actions.
Great. Thank you for that. I would now like to provide an overview of the public comment process. If you wish to provide live public comment, please submit your request through the link to the online request form noted on the agenda. Please make sure you submit the form by 2:15 p.m. We're also accepting written comments, and all written comments should be emailed to Ms. Claudia Rodriguez before the conclusion of the meeting. They will be included in the record of the meeting. With that, Claudia, can you bring up the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of course.
Please follow me. Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, Claudia, I ask you if we have any public comments.
Director Atwater, we did receive a request from Mr. Dan Whaley. I'm not sure if he's joined. I don't see that he has joined, but you do have the letter that he submitted, as well as the other board members. So
That's fine. We'll receive his written letter, and if later on the agenda, if he gets on, we'll acknowledge that we received his letter. Moving on then, I'll move on to agenda item 6 and the approval of the minutes of July 15th, 2021, our regularly scheduled meeting. I note for the record that we had a few edits to it. Just to clarify, and Claudia, if you want, you can just highlight for the board. Director Sarah Palmer made a couple of suggestions, which we all agreed to.
and they have been updated and noted in the meeting minutes.
Great.
So you mentioned about why I mentioned my Rotary Club as opposed to just that I mentioned my Rotary Club.
I didn't mention that, but I did mention that you had edits in the meeting minutes.
Okay, so that edit that I gave you will be what's in the meeting minutes?
Yep.
Okay, because it wasn't what I downloaded this morning. Okay.
Yeah, it was corrected this afternoon.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move we approve?
Great. Do we have a second?
Second from Martin.
Great. Please call the vote.
President Atwater,
Yes?
Director Millibar,
Aye.
Director or Alternate Director Keegan,
I'll abstain.
Director Palmer,
Yes?
Director Martin,
Yes.
Director Chang,
Yes.
and Director Anaptawi.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Minutes have been approved.
Great. We'll move on to agenda item 7, the consent calendar. We have none, so I'll skip over that to agenda item 8, discussion items. And 8A is the September DCA monthly report. And I think Graham will be giving that presentation.
Yes, thank you, President Atwater. I'd like to walk through a couple of key points in this monthly report. So first, please, Claudia, yep, you're right where we want to be. Let's start on page 2 of the report. I'll highlight that we've added a program sequence at the bottom of the report. This is the first page of technical content of the report. It's been added to the bottom of the page to provide some context with regard to where we are in the overall sequence of activities. So we're currently in the planning and permitting step in the sequence, and we're partway through the project definition phase of sequence. So this will be something that we continue to update as we move forward through the schedule, and we'll continue to kind of reference this as we're talking about stepping through the program. So the DCA continues to support the Delta Command's Office of DWR. We're responding to requests for information, clarifications on the engineering technical backup that's been provided to the engineering team, as well as updating the engineering project reports and continuing to develop various technical studies, all in support of the preparation of the EIR. Also very engaged in a range of outreach efforts, some of which will be further discussed in item 8C of the agenda. So that's an item that we'll be getting to shortly with Nazli and Julie. Claudia, if you could please now jump to table 1 budget. So this is section 3, table 1. Thank you very much. So here you can see the revised budget, the overall current budget of $23.5 million. So this was based on the July approval of this board to roll over $2 million of the underspend from last fiscal year into the current fiscal year. And then just for your awareness, we've committed approximately $17 million. So at this point, we're still sitting on about $6.5 million in reserve. Next, I just wanted to jump to the schedule. Claudia, it's at the very end. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So we wanted to highlight down on the fieldwork section of this program schedule that we are working towards a relatively small investigation and testing program this fall as we continue to collect subsurface data and confirm assumptions for conceptual design. These are locations that have current temporary entry permits to enter the properties and conduct the investigation. The court-ordered entry process continues to move at a relatively slow pace due to court backlogs and associated with COVID, but I am optimistic that we'll have access to more locations for a more comprehensive and robust investigation program in the spring, summer of 2022. So those are just a quick highlight of some keys that I wanted to bring to the board in the monthly report. And I think I will pause here to see if there's any other questions or comments.
Great. Thanks, Graham. Just checking with Claudia, is there any public comments on this agenda item 7A?
President Atwater, at this time, we have no public comment requests.
Yeah. Any questions from the board? I think we're in that smooth transition period here bi-monthly. Everybody comfortable with the amount of information you're getting? Good.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's go to 7B then. And the senior leadership spotlight, Karen Askeland with
Yes.
DCA.
President Atwater, if I can, and members of the board, I just want to provide a quick introduction for Karen, if that's okay.
Please do.
Thank you. So here we have Karen Askeland with us today. Welcome, Karen. Karen's the DCA Environmental Liaison. She has a key role, especially given where we are right now in the environmental process. Karen is really a critical link between the engineering and environmental teams. In her role, she helps keep those teams connected and ensures priorities are clearly understood and that each team's needs and expectations are being met. So Karen, we're happy to have you here today. Please tell us more about yourself.
Great, thank you. Hi everyone, thanks so much for having me. As Graham said, I'm Karen Asklund and I'm the environmental liaison. I actually presented to some of you back in July 2020 along with Gwen Buchholz. Since then, we've had some changes to the board and also changes to our environmental team as Gwen retired and I took over as environmental liaison. So, you know, Graham invited me to come today and introduce myself and provide some more information on my background and a little bit on my role here at DCA. All right, next slide. There we go. So yes, like I said, I'll go over my education and career background, a bit over my role, and then also touch on my current priorities right now before opening it up for questions. All right, so I received my undergraduate degree in environmental science and management with an emphasis in watershed science and a minor in soil science from UC Davis. I worked for a few years after college and then I went back to graduate school. And that's where I attended the Bren School of Environmental Science and Management at UC Santa Barbara. While I was there, I focused on watershed sciences and with a real emphasis on market-based approaches to water resources management. The master's program at Bren was a really great experience. It's not your typical research program, but rather an interdisciplinary program that really focuses on the natural sciences as well as statistics, economics, law, policy, business. Instead of an individual master's thesis, we did group projects where we had a real client and we worked on real issues. My thesis involved developing an operational plan for a potential groundwater mitigation bank or exchange in the Gallatin Valley of Montana. And so this actually prepared me really well for a career in consulting since I had clients that we were really working for. And then here's a picture of me in between my 2 years of grad school and my internship, where I actually worked for a water rights consultant in Bozeman, Montana, and I worked on my thesis while I was there as well. I got to go fly fishing. All right, so next slide. So before going to grad school, I worked for a few years in communications and outreach for an environmental nonprofit, Environmental Defense Fund. I worked on wildlife conservation issues and specifically worked on a project that paid landowners for providing ecosystem services such as wildlife habitat. So this was a great experience for me right out of undergrad. Not only did I get to work on a program I was really passionate about, but I learned a lot about effective communication and outreach amongst a diverse group of stakeholders. This included ranchers, oil and gas industry, NGOs, and government agencies. After grad school, I started working for CH2M Hill, which is now Jacobs Engineering, and that's where I'm still at now. So I've worked on a variety of water resource projects, including several climate change resiliency projects, such as the City of San Francisco's Sea Level Rise Vulnerability and Consequences Assessment. I also worked with other Bay Area counties or water agencies on resiliency projects, including projects on flood risk reduction. Additionally, I worked in environmental permitting for the City of San Mateo's Clean Water Program. And in this program, they're upgrading their wastewater treatment and collection system. So there I worked on environmental documents, CEQA documents, permitting applications, and permitting compliance. And there on the slide is a picture over at the wastewater treatment plant where I was giving a worker environmental awareness training. And so this kind of led me to my current role, which is working on Delta Conveyance as the environmental liaison. I joined DCA in the summer of 2019, And it's been a really interesting project and a great team to work with so far. All right, so next we can go to the next slide and I'll tell you a bit about my role. And Graham touched on this a bit with his introduction, but I serve as that connection between DCA's engineering team and DWR's environmental team. I facilitate the transfer of engineering information to DWR for use in environmental documents, analyses, and permit applications. I also provide input to DCA's engineering team and fieldwork teams related to environmental considerations or permitting requirements. Additionally, I'm DCA's environmental lead for our fieldwork. I help coordinate the biological and cultural monitors for our soil investigations program and provide information to DWR for the environmental analysis and other documentation. I also have helped with stakeholder outreach, preparing maps and other materials for our stakeholder engagement committee meetings. All right, next slide. Okay, so that leads me to some of my current priorities. So I've been working with the DCA engineering team to complete the engineering project reports that I'm sure you've heard a lot about. Graham mentioned them in the board report. And these summarize the engineering design information that will be given to DWR's environmental team. You know, it'll provide technical information to be included in different analyses. And I help write the narrative summaries for this. I also worked on a few of the technical memoranda. And I also work with the GIS team as they pull the design drawings and design information into GIS for use by our team and also by DWR. So this is really important to make sure we have the correct and consistent terminology for our project features and to make sure we're showing the right project features and pulling in the right facilities that can help with environmental analyses down the line. Another priority we've got is that we'll be reviewing information in DWR's environmental analyses to make sure it's consistent with all of our work. And as Graham mentioned, we've already been responding to some information requests and things like that so far. And then of course, continued coordination just generally between our two teams with DWR and DCA. All right, and yeah, with that, I would like to just thank you for your time. I can open it up for some questions or anything.
Absolutely. Excellent presentation, Karen, and we really appreciate all the work and your background and your professionalism in your endeavors and trying to, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's and get all the documents accurate. Any questions from the board?
Just a comment by Adnan here.
Sure.
Sure. I just want to say how nice it is to have these spotlights. It's really nice to see kind of the team here. It's clear Karen is super qualified and an exceptional person working as part of a large and complex team. So just kudos to all the work that has gone in finding great people to work on this very complicated project. And Karen, your background is fantastic. So thanks for the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Any other, Sarah, your hand
Yeah.
up?
I would just like to say, I mean, it's fabulous to hear your background and hear what you're doing. And I'm going to be calling you at some point because I mentor a whole bunch of high school students in careers and this type of a thing. And since you're not a battle-hardened warrior queen like I am, you would be a much better, person to maybe talk to them at some point, maybe in a round table, either by Zoom or whatever. But I'm hoping to contact you on that, and so be warned.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good.
She will call you. Any other questions from members of the board?
So I see Robert and Gary.
Got it. Robert, go ahead.
Thanks, President Atwater. Thank you, Karen, for your background. I guess the only question I have for you was the fly fishing picture. Were you on official company time when that was occurring? Or?
Well, I was interning, so it wasn't real too much company time, but no, it was on a weekend. It was really great. I actually got to team up with Trout Unlimited and go with their intern program. They have a more official intern program, so they let me join even though I was over at a water right consulting firm, and so it was all catch and release, but it was it was really fun.
Very nice. Thank you.
Director Martin?
Thank you, President Atwater. And Karen, thank you for your presentation. I want to echo Adnan's comments about the seniors leadership spotlight. I really do appreciate it. And Karen, it's obvious we're fortunate to have you as part of the team. For such a young person to have such a broad background in education and work experience, we're really definitely fortunate to have you. And I did appreciate the presentation, everything except that San Francisco Giant hat you were wearing.
That's funny.
So thank you, Karen.
Yep, thank you.
Very good. Any other comments from the board?
This is Director Millibar. I just want to welcome Karen, and I'm sure she'll do a great job to help us further our project and get our permits. So welcome aboard, and we look forward to all the good work that you're going to be involved in.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. If there aren't any other comments, Karen, again, thank you so much for an opportunity to, one, to meet you, and two, to hear about all the great work and professional development you've been helping us out on at the DCA. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Let's move on to 8C, which is the Stakeholder Engagement Committee process. Who's going to give that presentation? Doesn't indicate on the agenda.
Yes, I can start it. Hi, everybody.
Thanks, Nestle.
How are you?
Very good.
Good. I wanted to give a little update and also introduce Julie Spezia, who is working with our group now over at DCA, helping with community outreach. She lives in Sacramento, and is kind of on the ground, longtime Delta expert, and has been involved in any number of organizations as a consultant out there. One of the things that we decided to do as SEC work was winding down, and sort of our role in DCA, sort of giving design engineering considerations, is kind of less rapid, I guess. We're sort of doing it not as much as we were in the last year or so, as we head towards the EIR, was to actually spend some time going back to some of the communities and some newer communities to go over the materials that have been presented. It's such dense material. Obviously, this is a really complicated project from a design and engineering perspective. And there's also a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of folks who just haven't had the time to attend public meetings. So based on recommendations from the SEC and based on other folks who've come to us, we reached out to some groups, or folks have reached out to us, and we've had some small meetings, and it's been really successful. The point of the meetings, we keep saying, is not to change anyone's hearts or minds, but to really come out with facts about the project and really specific to these communities, their neighborhoods. It's when they're close to sort of facility sightings and whatnot, and to talk about things like traffic and the facility siting and construction schedules and things like that, and to get feedback as folks who live nearby and will be affected by the project. So we've had a few of those meetings. They've gone really well. We're going to continue having them over the course of the next many months. And one thing I'd like to have Julie talk about as well, in terms of how to think about how do we get all this information that we now have, how do we make it accessible to folks, especially while we're in this sort of weird limbo with COVID. And I'd love for Julie to hop on and talk a little bit about the libraries project that we are working on.
Yeah, thanks, Nasli. So as many of you know, that your local librarian is just really a great community resource. And he or she is usually wanting to make sure you get the information that you're looking for. And we realized that we were really missing out on an asset in the community that could help get the most accurate information out to people. And people in the SEC expressed their concern that people aren't all computer savvy or able to log on. And so we thought, well, why not put our materials out into the libraries and have them available and update them like quarterly. So we looked at the libraries that we've been working with. There's like 5 libraries that are right in the heart of the Delta in the traditional legacy communities. And we realized that that wasn't really adequate because the project, depending on which alignment we choose, actually goes quite outside that area. So we communicated with the 5 Delta County library managers, and we came up with a list of 20 libraries that they felt like would serve the people that we're trying to reach. And so we created a binder that has all the materials that you could print, plus a flash drive or thumb drive that has all of the videos and all of the materials, so that it's a really complete set of everything. It includes DWR documents on tribal engagement as well as information about the EIR process, but it has everything that we've produced for the DCA, plus a map book, an up-to-date map book. So we will keep the map book up to date, and we will keep refreshing the thumb drive as we produce more videos. And also, when the EIR does come out, we will help DWR get the EIR materials out to those 20 libraries. We are also exploring a training session with the Sacramento area librarians because they asked if we would be willing to do that. So we're trying to figure that out. But the response from the librarians has been very positive. And we are not surprised because, like I said, they really, really see as their mission getting information to people who, when they're looking for it. So it seems like a really good partnership, and so far it's going really well.
Thank you so much, Julie. And yeah, and as a reminder, we have our SEC meeting. We've been on sort of a hiatus as well since June, so our SEC meeting will be next Wednesday, normal times from 3 to 6. And I think that's it, unless there's specific questions about any of the community meetings that were held, the neighborhood meetings.
Oh, and we should mention that the virtual tour is also now on the website in Cantonese and Spanish.
Yeah.
So that just expands the reach.
That's right. Virtual tours are a really great way. It was something that we created during COVID when folks couldn't, we had been planning on taking the SEC on a tour, sort of everyone in a bus. COVID happened, we knew we couldn't, and we realized that what we could do was sort of essentially create a virtual tour that kind of, using the map books, kind of hones down, shows photos of the areas, very specific areas where the proposed facility sightings are, and gives people a sense of the whole project. Each tour, it's split by sort of northern and then central eastern alignments and the southern proposed facilities, and really gives a chance for folks in sort of about 45 minutes to get a real kind of in-depth view of all the proposed facility sightings and the different alignments and the alternatives. So yeah, it's really wonderful to have it be available in more languages.
Well, thank you so much, Nasli and Julie, both of you. Your enthusiasm and really getting into the trenches of getting public input has been wonderful. Any questions from the board? I don't see any. We can move on if we don't have any questions.
Director Chang, sorry.
Yeah, Director Chang actually has a question.
Thank you, President. Yeah, quick question for Nasli. So in the few outreach meetings that you've held since I think our last board meeting, how's the attendance and the participation been? If you could give a sense of that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so they're purposefully sort of meant to be small meetings. They're requested by a few people, and the folks who request us kind of bring in some neighbors. So they're certainly not large kind of public meetings the way this meeting is, for example. It's really just neighbors, and the word is kind of spread throughout them. And what we offer is obviously is our sort of engineering expert, and often it's Graham, it's Phil, and anything else. So attendance is anywhere between sort of 5 and 15 folks. And as I said, they have the knowledge of everything. I mean, it's not surprising, but I know that our engineering team has sort of gone out kind of ad nauseum, but there's nothing like living in a neighborhood and understanding what happens every time there's a heavy rain in one specific area. So the feedback, the concerns that people bring up to us are great, and they're things that we might never know about, right? Like, I mean, there's literally, I remember in Hood, somebody mentioned the whole neighborhood knows about this sort of pond, and it only happens when there's heavy rain, which isn't something we've necessarily experienced over the last year or two, but it's something that kind of shows up and really affects people. And those are the things that not just they want help mitigating, but they want to know how the project might affect it, or construction might affect it, or affect their homes. So it's incredibly helpful to have these kind of smaller meetings, and the intent is always to keep them fairly small. We don't keep people out. It's just that I think for the neighborhood, they don't want it to be, I'll be perfectly frank, this isn't sort of these sort of large group meetings where people come and sort of yell and scream about the project. That's not what we do. They want very specific information about facilities and construction and traffic, and they share information back with us. So yeah, they're sort of purposefully small and really effective. And I think once folks realize that, as I said, that we're not there to kind of try to sell them on a proposed project or anything like that, but we're just there to kind of show them the engineering considerations, it kind of creates, I think, a better tone. And yeah, I think all we ever say is we just want folks to have accurate information. And it is definitely surprising. I think Julie and I keep seeing this, and it's really surprising how little is known about the sort of current manifestation of the proposed projects, and how much misinformation there is, frankly, as well.
Thanks so much, Nasli. Yeah, that's a great clarification for me. So appreciate the good work that you all are doing.
Of course.
Great. Any other questions from the board? Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on then to 8D, the SEC report out with
Yes.
David Glosky.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wanted to introduce, we haven't had an SEC report out in quite a while.
Yep.
Mr. Glosky is part of our SEC, lives on Bethel Island. And frankly, David always asks us the very best questions and challenges us and the engineering team, I think, in the best ways. So really happy to introduce him. And David, the board is yours.
Thank you, Nasli. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Next slide. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to address you folks. Just a little bit of background on me. So as Nasli mentioned, I've been a homeowner here on Bethel Island for 22 years now, as a matter of fact, our 22nd summer up here. We make lots of use of the water, boating, skiing, fishing, just hanging out. I happen to be an engineer by training, both nuclear and mechanical. And I focused a lot on flows, energy, environmental issues in my career. Mostly retired now. I kind of ended up the last half of my career working around environmental software and helping large companies manage environmental data to the size of Exxon, Shell, that type of company. I'm also active just living here. I got active with DWR around the initial False River barrier. That was in 2015. I'm actually currently in communications with them on the current barrier that's in and some of the flows we're seeing. We were supposed to meet out there the other day, and I was going to take some people around, but they'll be coming out in a couple of weeks, and we're tossing some ideas around. Also involved with the Frank's Track Futures project. That's currently, I guess, looking for funding at this point. Next slide, please. So been on the board since its inception. I addressed this board 14 months or so ago. I think my primary message was, try to be a good neighbor and show empathy for the people and the communities that are out here. And I've always been pushing for a discussion on benefits from very early on, and really happy to see how that's progressing with the Delta Fund and some of the meetings going on. Next slide. So one of the things that I've been talking about for the last year, and I'm sure Graham and others are kind of tired of me continually bringing them up, but I'm probably going to continue to do that until I, get some resolution myself, is that I really believe beyond the financial benefits, there's an opportunity for this project to deliver more solid physical benefits to everybody here in the Delta. And I typically focus on two that have kind of come to the top for me. And one is the ability to deliver fresh water to the South Delta. We've heard of, algae blooms and water quality and stagnant water. And I think there's an opportunity to bring positive benefits there in this design, and also to improve emergency response to things like levee breaks, terrorism, climate change, and other things. And actually, it's interesting, some of the people I've talked with have actually pointed out that the initial peripheral canal design of the 70s had some of this concept built in, and I'll touch on that in a second. The second one is I'm still strongly believing that there should be redundancy between any new pumping station and the current Banks station. So I think it's just better economics. Again, it can help water quality, emergency response, all kinds of things. To not, you know, DWR, the people in the area, the exporters, everybody benefits. And I'm really kind of surprised that there really isn't any traction in looking at this and having complete operational redundancy between those two pumping stations. Next slide, please. So this is just an excerpt. That table there in the middle is how the original design of the 70s planned for having 6,300 cubic feet a second available to push into the delta to help with fresh water and quality in its design. And I know that was obviously a much bigger flow then, and this is a large number, but I think there's still ways to have the new design have available capabilities to support this type of concept, you know, when it's really needed. And you can go back to the environmental impact report of the 70s, and this table is taken right out of there. And so, you know, I think it was my idea, but obviously these people had this idea, this concept. There was a reason why they had it in there. It would be really interesting to hear about all that work that they put into that design and why they did this. And that knowledge should probably be recovered and recovered to affect the new design. Next slide, please. So my main message to you at this point is I am imploring anybody. I really haven't had the feeling, I mean, people are obviously hearing me. The most I've gotten is they've cleared the way for me to talk to different Delta experts. I've probably had a half a dozen meetings set up by the DCA staff. I really believe that a lot of the driver was to get me to the people that could set me straight, but it did actually the opposite. Every one of those meetings pretty much supported, you know, my feelings. So I'm really, you know, asking you folks to get informed of what I'm presenting. Have me present, ask staff about this, have me present if you want, hear a discussion, because I think I can ask some questions. And there was some accommodation. I did talk to the experts, and I know that most of them were saying, especially, I mean, I learned about emergency response, where the people that handle, you know, emergency operations plans for the Delta said that in times of a levee break or terrorism, and there was high salinity in the South Delta, the ability to put fresh water in would be a great tool to have and save a lot of time in recovery once salinity was in the South Delta. And I know these design changes will cost time and money, but I think they're really smart. And I think anybody, you know, like an organization like this and a project like this, if you're going to be a good neighbor and partner in the Delta, you're going to think of good things you can do, you know, not just financially, but operationally, and how you can benefit this whole area. And it indeed benefits yourselves and this project as well. And again, I think that, you know, this thing should just be able to help physically as well as financially. So last slide, please. I think there's one more in there. In these opportunities, I had to meet Delta experts, and it's really impressive, the people and, you know, the depth that they're going in their area. And I talked with people at the, you know, Protection Commission, the Stewardship Council, the Delta Water Master, Contra Costa, you know, the Coalition of Counties people. I talked with a lot of people. And it really, you know, one of the things that I just would like to convey is that I really don't believe I've seen an organization that really looks out for the Delta as a whole. All of these organizations are good, but they all have their charters and their swim lanes. And you know, I'm not sure any of them had felt as though it was a charter for them to raise new ideas or ways that things like what I'm presenting here could actually be put on the table and looked into. And I haven't seen an organization that could advocate on that behalf. And I know that's not resolvable by the DCA. You have your own charter and your own swim lane. But I think, you know, I know that you have, you know, the number of members of the board here, and I think it's unfortunate that there's not a member of the board that kind of lives and works in the Delta and cares about it and have that voice on your board. And I think it would be, you know, nice to see that voice at this highest level that you folks are kind of tangling with currently. So I think that's it. That's the message I was hoping to help you folks out with, and thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much, David. I really appreciate your thoughtful comments and giving us a lot of things to consider. Any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, again, thank you so much, and we will, we have your information, and we'll be certainly in our ongoing process working with a variety of stakeholders in the Delta, and look forward again to talking to you in the future.
Thank you.
Sarah, I just saw you.
I'm on mute. There we go. I had a question in terms of if one were to put something like this in, number one, it's not a peripheral canal, and so it's a different physical entity in terms of something that's 150 feet down to pull water up and put it into the South Delta. I mean, I understand, David, your rationale with this, and it makes a lot of sense. But I'm just wondering, the cost I would think would be astronomical. And the other thing I was wondering about is what are the realities now with climate change and everything in terms of the environmental issues for doing something like that?
I really believe it actually is a tool to be used to fight off the issues of climate change, which will result in higher waters and more problems with salinity. And this would be a tool to use in holding it off. And in terms of costs, I personally don't believe it's, I mean, is there cost? Yes. And the size of your project, I actually don't think it's going to be a huge cost. As a matter of fact, one of the initial designs of your southern forebay was a spillover into Indian Slough, which is a crude form of taking the water that's fresh and putting it into the South Delta. So, you know, actually having a design that handles that a little bit cleaner, not just an overflow into Indian Slough, would be good. And having a way to move the water from the underground, say the Bethany alternative, over into the forebay. Everything to me should be connected down there to give you complete operational flexibility going back and forth between the two sides. You should be able to have through Delta conveyance and use your new pumping station that goes in if you wanted to, if that was necessary. So I think there's a couple of connections in the south, and they're, in terms of the size of your project, not large.
Very good. Any other questions?
Just President Atwater, I'm sorry, just if it's okay with you, it does come to my mind that I know this is something that DWR and Carrie has corresponded with and put some thought into. So if the board's interested, I think there might be some value there in hearing from Carrie.
Yeah, please do.
Great, thanks. I guess
Thank you.
As I start to sort of, hi. As I start to talk about this, I would also like to echo what Nasli was saying earlier, that I really appreciate it that David comes up with creative ideas and interesting things to try to add and contribute to the project. It's really been helpful over the course of the project to have that kind of, you know, I think it's helpful to have that sort of push and pull in terms of looking at creative ideas and out of the box things. So a couple of specific things about the ones that you suggested today. You were looking at the ability to add fresh water, and I guess in my mind, I'm sort of seeing two pieces of that. One is the similar to the peripheral canal along the sort of edges into the Delta tributaries, and the other is at the southern forebay. So at the southern forebay, I think that action could be included as part of the community benefits program, but not sort of as part directly of the Delta Conveyance Project, because it's not really what the Delta Conveyance Project is trying to accomplish. You know, our purpose and objectives are to try to improve the reliability of the State Water Project Delta infrastructure in the face of the many challenges that are coming. And so looking at water for emergency action or other functions in the South Delta is a little different. So it definitely fits within the community benefits program, but not necessarily within the objectives of the project. And I did want to add, you had mentioned the emergency response team, and I thought that was a helpful meeting as well. but they have a system that where whenever there is an emergency action like a levee break, they have a model that looks at the different tools that they have available and how to respond to that emergency action. And they did acknowledge that having a connection to the southern forebay would be another tool in the toolbox, and that could be beneficial, but it would only be beneficial in a fairly small area near that forebay. It's not something that could help improve water quality far away from that forebay. It's really sort of a localized effect. But again, I think all of that is something that we can consider as part of the community benefits program. The peripheral canal piece where it was putting water into the tributaries, primarily on the west side of the Delta, that was definitely a different kind of action. You know, the peripheral canal, as you guys mentioned, had a much higher capacity at 20,000 CFS, and it was at the ground surface. So it was fairly easy to have a connection into a stream or waterway. And it's different now that we're looking at a facility that's 150 feet below ground, because we would have to have the pumps and the pipes connecting it to the waterways. I think the other piece, though, is that adding the Sacramento River to other tributaries would have the potential to confuse up-migrating fish because the water would smell different. So I think we would definitely have concerns about putting water in on the west side.
Yeah, that
and
makes
then the
total
one,
sense. I'm sorry. Yeah. I used that as a reference before just to show that the concept of refreshing water as part of the project was useful. But yeah, I agree with that. But I think the southern forebay and, you know, we could dig down as to how beneficial it could be. I think it could probably help quite a bit. But you know, let's leave that to some other discussion.
Well, it's a good dialogue, and we'll continue to have these discussions as we move forward in the environmental documents, looking at both the impacts and analyzing alternatives. So it'll be a good, I think, and we appreciate your continuing to provide your comments and your valued contribution to suggesting things to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, let's move on to agenda item 9, staff reports and announcements. And the first one is our general counsel.
Thanks, President Atwater. So my reports in the packet. The one thing I wanted to highlight was the future of remote-only meetings. So as the board will recall, the governor's executive order, which allows us to meet in the remote-only format, will expire at the end of the month. And right now we're sort of looking at, given rising caseloads with the Delta variant, sort of what the future of that will look like. And while it's possible that the executive order may be extended by the governor, it's also possible that he may sign AB 361. This is emergency legislation, which was passed at the very end of the legislative cycle last week, which will allow local agencies like the DCA to meet in a remote-only format under basically the same rules we are right now during any state of emergency, when social distancing is recommended by state or local officials, or when meeting in person would present imminent health risks, imminent risk to the health and safety of attendees. There are some procedural requirements that would be new. Specifically, the bill requires that the local agency make findings prior to doing a remote-only meeting, and then reiterating those findings every 30 days during the emergency period. Those findings can actually be made at the beginning of a remote meeting, so it wouldn't really preclude us. It might just end up being a new agenda item at the beginning of a meeting, to the extent the board wish to take advantage of that. As I mentioned, the bill was just passed by the legislature, so has not been signed into law currently. So we're waiting for the governor to take action. But assuming that he does, that will be an option for the board to consider if it wishes to continue to meet remote only. And as a reminder, based on past board direction, staff is working to explore upgrading the board chambers in the first floor of the office building to more effectively accommodate hybrid meetings, so we would have that flexibility in the future. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good. Any questions from members of the board? So we got a lot of, seeing none, we'll move on to 9B and ask our DCA Treasurer Catano to give us her report.
Good afternoon. So I have about 3 reports, a couple of them combined. So this report you're looking at is our ending June 30, 2021. I'm not going to repeat it since I'm going to talk about July and August shortly. So we ended the year preliminary with unaudited $694,000, 727. And typically we reconcile this report to the our financials, so that's why you see it as listed preliminary for now, just in case there are any audited adjustments. So this is I believe, our financial on a cash basis, so a lot of it might not really change, but just wanted to show you this preliminary report as we anticipate that our auditors will be coming to us very shortly, and so we'll advise you actually on when they will come and present. And the next report I have to, the second one, just a minute. All the schedules are attached as usual for your review. So this second item, and you will probably see me always having, now that we're not meeting monthly, if the board prefers that I just report the month that we're in, I'll do that. But to the extent that you want me to just touch, just like I did right now, and talk about the ones that you missed since we're not meeting monthly, I can do that too. For this one, we combined July-August report, as we started July 1 and the same amount of money we ended in June, 694 to 727. And subsequently, you'll see that we had a lot of receipts coming in, about $4.4 million. We made a disbursement of roughly $3.2 million. And as of August 31st, 2021, we were left with a little about 1.9 million in the bank. So I was starting to pay the bills, and we'll give you next month where we ended in September. Typically, as you all know, I really just only hold up roughly $800,000 of the seed money. Everything else is really receiving, paying the bills, or the bills a little bit delayed. As you can see, in that month, we had receipts of almost 1.6 million, so consisting of 8 invoices. And then you see us paying out a little bit, and we had a payables of roughly 2.8 million we didn't pay. Our net position for the month was 823,882. So that's how we pay the bills. This year really is going to work, and maybe I didn't know if Josh, if we have ever told the board that we are intending to refund the seed money and try to get a little bit of money from DCA for prepaying leases. There are things that we have to pay. We can't wait till they reimburse. So we're hoping to have about 500K in the future just for prepaying the bills and reconcile back to the DCO. And last but not least, our budget actuals versus budget versus actuals is also listed. The schedules are there. We had roughly about 0.4 million higher than budget, and really it's timing. And our numbers slightly differ from what Graham will show you, because as I said earlier, we're delayed. He's the first books, and we're the sub-ledger, and we're really the ledger. So we only record once we pay the bills and everything else. So that's my report, and take any questions.
Great, thanks, Katana. Any questions from members of the board? Okay, thank you so much for the presentation, Katana, and really appreciate all the documentation in the board packet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Bucknam, DWR's Environmental Manager. We've already talked a lot today, but give us an update.
Thank you, President Atwater. Just a quick update that we're continuing to work on developing impact analysis and mitigation measures towards a draft environmental impact report next summer. And in the meantime, just a couple of things to mention. Tonight, we have a technical webinar to talk about environmental justice and background information, the survey we completed, and our impact approach, how we're approaching analyzing impacts. So there is a link on here if people haven't signed up and are interested. I think that we can still, while you do have to register, we still have an option to get a link out today if people are interested. And the other thing is just to highlight that the field investigations that are a part of the soil investigations in the Delta are starting again next week. And so I do have a link in my report for the 2-week look ahead map if anyone wants to know what's coming up.
Great, thank you. And I do have it on the calendar, and I did register to listen in.
Thank
from the
you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Any questions from the board? Well, thank you so much. As always, you give very excellent, concise reports. We look forward to hearing from you in 2 months, probably in November. 9D, do we have any verbal reports from the board or others? Sarah, you have your hand up.
You surprised. Okay. At any rate, I just wanted to say it was so interesting to hear about the library project and that type of thing, and really letting people know and finding out how many people do not really know what the project is. And I've got to say that I find this is true outside of the Delta as well, and this is still people who are going to be affected by it. And I'm going to give a little anecdotal thing here. Had a party of the swimmers who did the Del Val swim this past weekend for my daughter. She's involved in a couple of adult swim class things, and they were all vaccinated, by the way, every single one of them. And but the one thing I did want to say is that as I was sitting there talking to them, people were saying, well, where's the Delta? I mean, these are adults. These are people who are between the ages of 30 and 40. And they're boaters, and they didn't know what the Delta was. And I have to say, Valerie happened to walk in later to this because I said, oh, well, come on over if you like. And she rolled her eyes because there I am at the table, the picnic table, with all the SEC maps spread out and the maps of the Delta spread out. And I'm telling people about what the Delta is and what the DCA is. So we have to somehow reach more folks even. I don't know how to do this. Maybe have our various different agencies have more output and outreach on this specific thing, but people do not know. And I think the ignorance is going to bite us in the butt at some point if we're not careful to watch for this. So yeah, and so I'm giving a talk at the Dublin Rotary on the Delta conveyance. In October, I gave a talk to our Rotary, my Rotary, on, as I mentioned before, on the portfolio. I gave a talk to another group on the portfolio. So we need to get the word out and maybe just be so basic as to say, hey, this is a map. This is where the Delta is, and this is what we're planning, and this is why. We just need to educate more. That's it.
Great. It's something we always have to remind ourselves, no matter what we do, there's a lot more people we need to educate. And
yeah. So go to your parties and take a map.
Yes. Any other verbal reports from members of the board? See none. We'll move on to future agenda items. Any requests for a future agenda item? Again, this is September, so our regular scheduled meeting will be in 2 months in November.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any, get a hold of Graham or give me a call and we'll chat about any modifications to the agenda. With that, I think we're ready to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good
Thanks.
couple months.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good work, staff. Good job.
Have a lovely rest of the week.